All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 2nd, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. As first matter, any comments from the commissioners as to items not related to the agenda?
I just want to recognize and let everyone know that we recognize the sadness that is felt everywhere in the county right now because of John Eby's death. As I just mentioned to Rye, I don't quite believe it, and I know that it's so. And I don't know that I've ever denied someone's death before, although I know that that's a common thing to happen when one is grieving. But in this case, probably because most of us didn't know what was going on and that he was so ill, that he and his family were suffering through that. I still am denying, and I'm at least unconscious of it. I know all of you send our love to his family and our sympathy also to you, Rye, because I know it was a tremendous loss in your life.
Thank you.
I think we all echo the same sentiment, but thank you, Susan. Any other comments from commissioners? How about comments from staff for us?
I don't think I have anything other than, always a reminder about your next meeting dates, but those are on the bottom of your agenda, so you don't need to dwell there.
Are there any comments from the public that is here tonight or online? Bonnie can field that for us. Having to do with matters not related to tonight's agenda.
We have a Tyler Owen online. Tyler, do you have any comments that are not related to what's on tonight's agenda? And I did promote you to panelist.
I do not.
Okay, that was Chris Benden, who has nothing.
Okay, thank you. All right, well then we'll move into the public hearing portion of tonight's agenda. Open the public hearing and allow staff to give us a summary of NMP Residents Trust.
All right.
West Buttermilk, long title.
Yep. So the application before you is the NMP and SEP Residents Trust application for a GMQS application for new development rights in the rural area, subdivision, conceptual submission, land unit development review, rezoning to a PUD, and activity envelope review. And similar to what we did with the recent in the meeting where I had the applicant, is that we're going to do that tonight so that we avoid doing some redundancy. And so Glenn's going to go ahead and present just the background and existing conditions and what the application is proposing, and then I'll follow it up with the compliance with the land use code. And then we'll go from there. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Glenn to start.
Okay,
Anyway, Glenn.
thanks. I have to try to share the screen. All right. Okay, good. My name's Glenn Horn, and I want to enter this affidavit of notice into the record for Bonnie.
Thank you.
Please make that part of the public record. I'm representing the SEP Trust, which is a trust for the benefit of Suzanne Pfister, and the NMP Trust, which is the NMP Residents Trust, which is for the benefit of Juliana Pfister. Juliana owns tract 1 of the West Buttermilk Pfister tracts. Suzanne owns tract 2. Tract 1's 37 acres in size and tract 2's 49 acres in size. Together, they make up 86 acres. It's zoned AR10, so theoretically, based upon zoning, there could be 8 single-family houses developed on tracks 1 and 2. Let me orient you a little bit. Here is Highway 82, where this hand is. This is the Inn at Aspen. This is the West Buttermilk parking lot. Here's Owl Creek Road, and West Buttermilk Road takes off of the Owl Creek Road. You go through this big switchback, the next switchback, and a third switchback, 2 miles up the road. This is the Richard Woods lot split on the west side of the road. There are single family houses on Meets and Bounds tracks on the east side of the road. This area right here is the Eagle Pine subdivision. And here you've got tract 1, one of the subject sites, and tract 2, the second one. These parcels extend from the Richard Woods lot split all the way up to this point at the Buttermilk ski area. So this is the West Buttermilk Pfister Tracks plat. I worked on this with Art Pfister and his wife Betty back in 1990. Here's tract 1, Juliana's tract. Tract 2, Suzanne's tract. Tract 4, which was conveyed by Art to a third Pfister sister, Christina. Tract 3 and tract 5. This is where the West Buttermilk lift is. And this is one of the ski runs. This is where the road splits right here and goes to the ski lift and to the parking lot. So you can see it in plan, and I'll go back and you can see it on the aerial. Tract 1, tract 2, this is tract 4, 5, and 3. Anyway, it gives you the orientation in terms of where we are. The land use objectives for this project. Suzanne is working on this for her estate. She's got 2 sons, Arthur and Daniel. Suzanne is here in the back of the room. Daniel's next to Suzanne. So Suzanne's objective is to try to get her estate in order for her 2 sons. Juliana is seeking to subdivide the property and sell. She's really not interested in living on this property anymore. So some background. There's the Pfister Ranch, if you remember, went all the way down from the upper ranch, which is about 250 acres. That comprised the West Buttermilk Pfister tracks. The upper ranch also included where Eagle Pines is. Then it cuts over to Buttermilk. The ranch went across the Buttermilk ski area. Cows used to be grazed on the ski area, and then down to where the Maroon Creek Club is. Art and Betty's house was down at the base of Tyhack, and most of the land on the south side of Highway 82 over to the Tyhack lift was part of the lower ranch. In 1989, Art obtained a 1041 hazard review to develop a house for Nancy on the 250 acre upper ranch. And that house was approved through the 1041 process, and that house was built. In 1990, when I first left the planning office, Art approached me and asked me to help him come up with a plan for the West Buttermilk Pfister tracks. So we went through that planning process together, Art and I, and developed the 5 tracks. If you back up a little bit, you can see these are the tracks. Track 1 was Nancy's, and now it's Juliana's. Track 2, Suzanne's. Track 4, Christina's. Track 5 and 3 were sold. So this is an aerial that shows the upper ranch that we're just describing. Here's tract 1, and this is where Juliana's house is. And you can see it's accessed by this road. There's a road that goes along this boundary here that goes down to a barn that's located on tract 2, Suzanne's tract. There's an employee dwelling unit in this location, which is on tract 1. Here, you've got Suzanne's house on tract 2. If you look at this plan, it shows that there are pretty gentle slopes. The area in white are slopes that are below 15%. The slopes in green are 15 to 30%. Here's Suzanne's house. This is Juliana's house, Suzanne's barn. This is a gully. And when you look at it in the aerial, you can see here's the gully. There are some steep slopes on the side of the gully that go up towards Suzanne's house. But for the most part, the land is pretty gentle. This area here on the west side of tract 1 is pretty pristine aspen stands, and it's elk production area. Above this area here, this area that I'm pointing to is irrigated from a little spring that's shown in blue right here. And it's possible to irrigate these lands. There are about 4.3 acres of land that can be irrigated. The land above the spring up in this area is also very pristine, thick, dense vegetation. This slide shows the elk production area. In red here, on the west side of tract 1, and then west of tract 2 is an active elk production area. And we visited this site with Kurt Tesh, Parks and Wildlife, and he is concerned about this area and the elk production that goes on there. This is the 1/4-mile buffer that would be to the west of the elk production area. And it was Kurt's feeling that there could be development within this 1/4-mile buffer, even though the code suggests that there not be any development there unless the Division of Wildlife consents to that development. Kurt felt that it was good to cluster development in this area in the 1/4-mile buffer. And he was influenced by the applicant's offer to sterilize 55 acres of land in a conservation easement. So that would be the west side of tract 1 and really everything above the gully on tract 2 all the way up to the government trail. So if you look at this next slide, it showed, okay, here we go. Came up on my screen before yours. This is a blow up of, a view of the entire site. We're proposing a conservation easement west of the gully here, and then south of the existing barn, 55 acres of land being placed in a conservation easement for the benefit of Pickens County. All of the active elk production area would be within that conservation easement. And if you look at the next slide, this is a blow up of the lower area. So you can see this line here would be the eastern boundary of the conservation easement to the west that I just showed you. And this line here would be the northern boundary of the conservation easement to the south. So if you take a look at it on this other screen that we just saw, this is that one boundary line that I just showed you. Here's the other one. And you can see the blow up of the site plan. Everything to the left or to the west is in a conservation easement. Everything south of this line, all the way to the government trail would be in a conservation easement, 55 acres. On lot 1, we're proposing that Juliana's existing house, which was Nancy's house, would be demolished and replaced, with a new house in this location. On lot 2, this would be a new lot and there'd be a new house in this location. We would access, lots 1 and 2 on the existing Nordic Trail, which goes like this to this point and then cuts down and goes over to the Richard Woods lot split, lot 2. That Nordic Trail has existed on the Pfister property since 1984, in an agreement between the Pfister family, and Aspen and Picken County, the Nordic Council and Picken County. It's not been just a gentleman's agreement, between Art and then, the Pfister family for use of that trail. As part of this land use application, the Pfister family will dedicate, a Nordic Trail. We propose that the Nordic Trail be located in this area in blue, which would be just south of the existing road that goes to the employee dwelling unit and also, to Suzanne's barn, which would be replaced by a house. What we suggest is that we work out the details of this Nordic Trail, between conceptual and detailed submission. We're sensitive to the fact that when you're Nordic skiing, it's great not to have to take your skis off to cross roads or driveways. Skiers come up from West Buttermilk and from Tyack to this point, right where my hand is right there. And they take their skis off and then they walk up to where the Nordic Trail is now. And they follow this Nordic Trail, which we propose to be replaced by a driveway, and then ski down across proposed lot 2, proposed lot 1 to the Richard Woods lot split, lot 2. So what we're suggesting is that we use the existing Nordic Trail as the driveway for lot 1 and 2. The Nordic Trail move to the north and be built parallel to the existing driveway just to the south of it. So skiers would come across the Nordic Trail and get to West Buttermilk Road right where my hand is there. They'd have to take their skis off and go down this portion of the trail. And unfortunately, they'd have to take their skis off a second time to cross this driveway. And then they would ski across here and cross the driveway again. It's about 250, 300 feet from the West Buttermilk Road to this crossing here. We would prefer that this didn't have to have this crossing, but it is necessary in this alignment. Some skiers may choose to just walk to this point and put their skis on once, instead of putting them on back here, taking them off, crossing the driveway and skiing the rest of the route. I want to remind you that there presently is one crossing of the driveway on the Nordic Trail in this location at this time. So unfortunately, we were proposing that there would be 2 places where you'd have to take your skis off. So looking at the next slide, I can run through these quickly, or Tammy, we can hold on these growth management quota system and commitments till later if you prefer.
It's up to you. I'm just gonna run through them quickly on mine, so if you have more detail.
I'll just go through them quickly because I'm prepared to do that. And it goes fire protection.
And Glenn,
Yes.
I think that Suzanne or one of the other board
Yeah,
members may
is
have a
the-
question.
Oh, sure.
Is it all right to ask a question then?
Sure.
How does this compare, your proposal now compare to what Craig Ward suggested?
Well, Craig is an advocate, as you know, for the Nordic Trail system. So what Craig would like, and as a Nordic skier, I would like this too, and Tammy would like it. We
Well,
all
I
would.
noticed that in this, that you're already mentioned later in the.
What's that?
I noticed that you're already mentioned later.
I know. I think that was kind of a slight though, because Tammy said that she didn't really think that I like skiing up the hill to get up there. And it's true. I like to park my car in this lot. And then ski on the Nordic Trail here and go over to the Sinclair Divide. And a lot of it is avoiding the climb, but it's also really the nicest part of the trail. So what we're proposing is a parking lot in this location here. And what we're struggling with is what Craig is saying is put the Nordic Trail on the driveway, which is in yellow, Suzanne. And then build a new driveway above the Nordic Trail. And the really nice thing about that is there would not be any driveway crossings because you would ski on this yellow line over to here and then cut into Richard Wood's lot, split lot 2. And the thing about that is the Pfister family would be put in a position of building a new driveway pretty much where the blue line is. And then the Nordic skiers would be where the yellow line is, and there would be no crossings. But anyway, we'd like to resolve this issue. But I'll remind you, the trail's been across this property on like a gentleman's agreement with the Pfister family since '84. And there is one crossing now. So, our feeling is we'd rather not have 2 crossings, but if there had to be, it's still pretty good for the Nordic Council and Pitt County to lock up this critical trail link in an easement. And we would hope there'd be some consideration of the fact that that trail's been there since 1984, 16, 24, 40 years, pretty much on a wink and a nod from the Pfister family.
I understand.
Yeah.
You've answered my question.
Okay, so, but I think, what Tammy suggests in our memo, and she'll discuss this further, is we need to work out an agreement on driveways and trail alignments. And it may be that the planning commission and the board of county commissioners should get out on the site and look at what's going on, because really what we'd like to see is come up with a plan that's easiest on the land so that we minimize the amount of disruption of the land that we have to do for driveway construction. And I'll get to that in these growth management comments. With respect to fire protection, the applicants worked with Allie Hammond, the wildfire resilience officer for the fire protection district. And the applicant's going to donate $15,000 to the fire protection district for vegetation management on the land that's above the airport, going up to the west part of Buttermilk Road, which is thick, dense, Gamble Oak, Serviceberry, Chokecherry. Allie's working on a plan to thin that vegetation out so that if there ever is a wildfire starting on the valley floor, it just won't rip up the hillside into the West Buttermilk neighborhood. The road system, the family is committing to do 200 lineal feet of additional guardrail on the West Buttermilk Road. There's a lot of guardrail up there already, but above the Aspen Oak subdivision, there's a stretch without any guardrail. And it really would be a safety improvement to install additional guardrail. We talked about transit and trail systems. I don't really need to go into that any further, except to say that the easement will be dedicated with respect to effect on the environment, water resources. The applicant's water attorney, Danielle Van Arsdale, has filed to adjudicate the spring in the gully that I showed you, and that spring will be used to irrigate the land below it, which has been irrigated in the past. Wildlife habitat, I've mentioned the 55-acre conservation easement, which is certainly encouraged by the growth management scoring. Looking at achievement of community goals, the open space preservation on this property is significant. There's cluster development, preservation of elk habitat, preservation of irrigated lands. In the category hazard mitigation and avoidance, we've avoided the steep slopes, floodplains, and we're in a low wildfire area. There's 50% density reduction. In terms of achievement of community goals, reduction in visible mass, there's 55% reduction in floor area, limiting houses to 8,250. And I want to remind you, the application was filed on September 1st, when the code still permitted you to develop 15,000 square feet of floor area on these tracks. So those are the rules that were in effect when this application was deemed complete. So the commitment is to reduce density of floor area by 55%, and that warrants the points as Tammy has calculated in her review. The creative bonus points, there's my parking lot that I talked Suzanne into putting there so that
Hopefully it has a sign.
yeah, you can drive up there. It's official now that Tammy said that I drive up there to ski. You know, I also use the senior lot now in Hunter Creek so I can ride the Hummingbird Traverse, and it is a nice benefit. In terms of the summary, you know, this plan and the West Buttermilk Pfister tracks are really Betty and Art Pfister's legacy. It all started as an estate plan for the daughters, Suzanne, Nancy, and Christina. And a funny story, in 1981, when I first got to town, I guess I was like about 25 years old, and I met Art somewhere, and he said, you can come up here on this property and cut down as much wood as you want and just take it away. And this was on track 1. And he didn't really explain what he had in mind, but it was a decaying aspen stand. So he wanted all that wood out of there. And I think Suzanne was kind of shocked at it, that everything on this whole property was mowed down and taken away. And if you look at it now, you know, 40 years later, it was really smart because it's a young, vibrant aspen stand, because Art got rid of all of that wood back in the early 1980s. And it really worked, and it's quite beautiful with young aspen trees. Other things that Art was concerned about when we did the West Buttermilk Pfister tracks, his direction was use existing ranch roads wherever you can, because he didn't want to build any more roads and tear up the land. So we're trying to continue with you know, Art's vision of using the existing roads. In this case, we're proposing to use the existing Nordic Trail because we think it's easiest on the land to use the Nordic Trail for a driveway. Art believed in locating the houses as close as possible to the road to minimize the need for driveways, overall to minimize site disturbance, to consider the elk and preserve the elk habitat, and to also provide for Nordic skiing for the community, which has occurred over the past 40 or so years. So anyway, that's a summary of the proposal. And we think it's a good one. We think it complies with the code, and we can take questions now or after Tammy makes her presentation.
Any more questions or, all right? Go ahead, Tammy.
If I could just keep it clear in my mind. So there's 8 lots allowed by zoning. That's the underlying zoning. There could be 8 lots developed. And so they could develop 8 because they zoning, but to get the development rights, they either go to GMQS or TDR. Can you do TDRs for lot development rights as well? Okay, that's what I understood. I just want to make sure I understand what that's.
Actually, when we submitted and we were deemed complete, we were not allowed at that point to use TDRs for the initial development, right? The code changed after we submitted. And I don't know whether, you know, the county attorney is going to let us cherry pick, you know, things like, whoa, we're deemed complete under one code, but we want to use the new code for TDRs. We submitted when you couldn't use TDRs for initial development rights.
Only GMQS.
Right.
The GMQS is a pacing vehicle, essentially, which is 17,000 square feet, which we're allowed. Okay, thank you.
All right,
couple of quick housekeeping things. It didn't get into the record. We have a quorum. And I apologize, I called you the wrong name, because it's been so long since I've seen you, Tammy. It's nice to see you. I know who you are. It's been a long time. So why don't you go ahead and take off where Glenn left off.
Okay. Share your screen. Okay. And some more housekeeping. So I've just passed out to the commissioners that are here. I know Jasmine's online. She doesn't have it before her, but there was a letter that was submitted this afternoon by Chris Benden, who's a local planner. And he's representing the landowner just to the north of tract 1. In regards to the trail alignment and some of my comments in the memo and the reso regarding that trail alignment, so we'll get to that a little bit later, but I just wanted you guys to have that as well. So I'm just gonna jump right in with the code compliance section of this presentation, and basically you can divide this application into 4 parts. First is the GMQS application for new development rights. Second is the subdivision application. Third is the PUD review, and 4th is the activity envelope review. And I'm gonna assume that everyone's read the memo and the GMQS scoring, because there's a lot of criteria, and I'm not gonna read each and every criteria in response to that. But just if you have any questions as we go along, I want further discussion, just stop me and we can go back and discuss it more, but I don't wanna read everything that's involved in this application. This application was, there we go, was referred to the agencies on the screen. We did receive comments from the planning engineer, environmental health, Aspen Fire Department, Pickens County Open Space and Trails, and the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space, and we got additional letters from Craig Ward, and Ingrid and Scott Rolls, and like I said, there's that additional letter that was submitted today from Chris Benden. So the first part of this application is the GMQS request. And they are requesting 2 new development rights for lots 2 and 4. And associated with each of those development rights would be 8,250 square feet. For a total of 16,500 square feet. And that would be taken out of that 17,250 square foot bucket for the 2023 competition. And there were no other competing applications. So they are eligible for that full amount. So the planning commission needs to review this portion of the application first and determine whether or not the applicant can be awarded the GMQS allotment. And based on that decision, then we can review the rest of the application. And for the attachment B in your packet, staff did recommend a score of 28, where there is a minimum of 22 points required. So on screen is the chart of all the criteria and the associated points. And then here we have a list of all of the commitments that Glenn just went over associated with that GMQS request. So I'm not gonna read through them because Glenn did a pretty good job going through them all. There are 2 though that I do think are worthy of discussion, and that is the trail alignment that we need to discuss more. My computer's really lagging on the slides. It's the Zoom meeting. Oh, okay. So as Glenn brought up, and as it's noted in the packet, right now, the proposed trail alignment is shown with the blue line on the screen. We did get comments from, like you said, Pickens County Open Space and Trails, who the easement would go to, the city of Aspen Parks and Open Space, as they would be the ones maintaining the trail and doing the grooming in the winter. And then the Nordic Council, as well as Craig Ward, and they all had very similar comments in that they're very supportive of the fact that they're, the applicant's willing to provide this easement, but they all really didn't like the idea of crossing those driveways, for safety reasons, you know, snow plowing reasons, trail maintenance, and just the skier experience as well. So as Craig Ward mentioned, and they all also mentioned, it would be better if the trail at least went just along the top line, like we just discussed, across the top boundary or northern boundary. Sorry, in place of where the existing driveway is. So just where my cursor is, and that would mean that the applicant would have to place their driveway where the proposed trail is. Either way, there's gonna have to be some kind of disturbance. It's my understanding that the trail needs to be at least 16 feet wide and relatively flat with not much slope. So there is gonna be some grading and definitely clearing associated with either, you know, placing the trail where it's proposed or placing the driveway where the trail is proposed. When we were on site, Glenn and I both noted that it would be ideal to, there's other possibilities of locating the trail off the property, on adjoining neighboring properties. And we further pursued that idea with the open space trails department, who said that they had been in contact with some of the previous or the current landowners, and that concept had been discussed at a prior date, but that's totally separate from this application, and that's what's being referred to in that letter from Chris Benjamin, that's a totally separate concept that's not being contemplated at this point. My intent with the comments in the memo were just that staff would support the applicant in pursuing alternative alignments at this point. We don't want to close the door on just saying this is the only solution and moving forward with it. We'd really like him just to pursue either switching the road or the trail or reaching out and to other adjoining properties and pursuing other alternatives. So with that, I have revised some of the conditions in the proposed resolution. So the conditions associated with that are condition 3A, 4C, and 14D. To make it more general that, like I said, the applicant just pursue other options. And in the event that the trail is located off the property, obviously that commitment, that GMQS commitment to provide that trail easement would be gone. So another solution would be to provide open space and trails with the funding to construct that trail somewhere else. I'll move on. Any further questions about that?
Kind of, sort of, if there's not a resolution as to where the trail is located between open space and trails and the applicant, and they simply revoke it, and we just take that off the score, they're still over the 22 threshold, right? Even without monetary contribution to build the trail elsewhere.
I don't know the math on that, but it's a tricky thing to do what they can't do is withdraw the commitments. Once they've submitted the application, it's
Is there any legal right for a gentleman's agreement, but is there any like prescriptive agent for a trail that's been given for so many years? That the county would be interested in exercising some sort of failed resolution.
I don't know enough about the circumstances of this particular use of the trail to say one way or the other about that. And furthermore, I don't know the substance of any prior agreement that may be out there, whether it was some sort of agreement that could have resulted in some permissive use of the property as opposed to something else. I guess I had a more specific question as to how this condition of approval is going to be worded, and I can look at that once we're going through this. But Tammy's generally correct that once the applicant has made commitments to make the NQS application, they can't just unilaterally, or they cannot withdraw them during the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing on the application. But of course, they also don't have the unilateral ability a trail that they don't own. So to the extent that the condition of approval is that they'll work with adjoining property owners or something like that to establish a suitable location for the trail and or locate the trail on their property with a corresponding or contemporaneous commitment to provide funding for construction or relocation of that trail. And that seems to get to where we're going, but I was gonna ask for a little bit of clarification on what that condition looks like, and Glenn could probably do that too, if Tammy's not exactly.
Yeah, so we can talk to the conditions on the screen right now, as I said, those are what I've proposed. The conditions be amended to.
Oh, I see, okay, so I missed that detailed, you would define the location there, and I'm sorry, I may have just
No, I
not
just did
paid
this
attention well enough to
an
that.
hour ago, so.
But it's not effective to bring a third party into this agreement. So,
That's correct, so I think if the additional commitment to pay the funds associated with that could potentially satisfy that condition as well. Is that how you understand it's drafted?
That's what I was going for.
Okay, cool.
If we need to further amend these.
I guess that's up for more commissioner discussion and more questions.
I guess
That was
that's-
my question about it.
Maybe I want to clarify, because the original commitment was to grant an easement for the trail. And then I think that's everybody's biggest desire is to have a permanent easement in place for that trail. So I think we want to make sure that's still captured. We just don't have necessarily the alignment that everybody can agree to yet. But as part of the growth management, the commitment to provide that easement, that's still being made.
Are you asking me?
I guess I want to
Yeah.
clarify, I want to make sure it's clear on the record
Yeah,
what. what's
Okay,
being-
on the record and to be clear, the applicant's commitment is to grant an easement for the trail. And that easement can be granted to Pitkin County, to the city of Aspen, to the Aspen Snowmageddon Florida Council, whatever entity the county commissioners choose that easement should go to. Craig said it should go to Pitkin County, you know, we don't really care who gets the easement. It's just for the Nordic Council, Nordic Trail use. We are concerned about the location of the trail. We think that it's easier to build a new trail than it is to build a new driveway. And it's easier on the land. You know, I go back to what, Art's views on this were when we did the original subdivision, is use the existing ranch roads for the driveways, minimize site disruption. And I think the thing that's easiest on the land, maybe not for the Nordic skiers, is to keep the existing driveway there that's been there for years and build a new trail just to the south of it in the blue alignment that we've proposed. Unfortunately, there would be another crossing of the driveway. But I would say that the crossings of the driveway would be much safer than what currently exists. If you come down the existing Nordic Trail, there is a good pitch there. You're screaming down that trail when you get to the driveway. And even a really good Nordic skier has trouble on that grade staying under control. So with the alignment we're proposing, it's a much better alignment for Nordic skiers, because of the safety involved with the driveway crossings. And I also want to mention that it's only about 250 feet from the West Buttermilk Road to the first driveway crossing. And the necessity to put your skis on, take them off and put them back on could be avoided just by walking those 250 feet before you put your skis on. And then the existing driveway could be used. There can be a new Nordic trail, which will be easier on the land than constructing a new driveway. There would only be one crossing of the Nordic Trail on the driveway if it's done that way. So anyway, that's my feeling about it. If the trail is ever moved to the other property, that's fine. The applicant's comfortable with the if clause here, if it moves, and maybe this will get sorted out before detailed submission. I do think it would be good for the planning commission and or the board to go up there and take a look at what's going on with these trails and see what I'm talking about in terms of using an existing driveway as the driveway in the future and building a new Nordic trail because it's a little easier on the land. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the trail and the driveways.
I have one more question in this area. Where did D come from? What's the reason for that being there? The $15,000.
The idea was that if the trail is located off the property, they've made the commitment to provide a trail easement, and that commitment would cease to exist. So if it is located off their property, that 15,000 came from talking with Open Space and Trails on giving a rough estimate on what it would cost to construct a trail in the general area. And that was on the low end of what they estimated. So that's where that number came from. It was just in lieu of the easement commitment.
Yeah, the reason I'm having trouble with that is that this applicant has given it for this many years. And I suppose along the way never talked about what you owe us for that easement. And now we're thinking about asking them to pay something because they pay us because we have used their land since 1984.
I mean, that we're not giving them points for, I guess, the past of what with all their goodwill in the past. I understand that, but it was, they're committing to a trail easement. If that trail easement isn't there, and we're giving them points, you guys are awarding points, what would be something that could be placed in lieu of that easement? So that's that. Joe?
I have a couple of questions. So on, I guess, starting with this one, so is it that if the unnamed adjoining property owner relocates it there, then the 15,000 goes away?
No, the way it's drafted is there would be a $15,000 donation by the applicants to help build the trail on the adjoining property.
And if the trail never gets built on the adjoining property, does the 15,000 go away?
Yes.
Okay, is it 15,000 per application per tract?
No,
Or is it
it's
15,000 per?
Yeah, it's just for.
Okay.
But I have one comment about, I studied the ownership maps and, most likely there's gonna have to be an easement on, the Pfister Tract 1. If you could put that up, Tammy, that slide.
Yeah, somewhere.
Well, no, there's gonna have to be, even if the trail goes on to the adjoining property to the north. There's gonna need to be an easement from the road to where, just about where it crosses the driveway there. Because The adjoining property to the north does not have contiguity with the West Buttermilk Road. There's an intervening piece of Eagle Pines subdivision, Eagle Pines Lot 1. So in order to take off the West Buttermilk Road and ski across the adjoining property to the north, you would also have to cross Eagle Pines Lot 1. It's funny, there's a panhandle of Lot 1 that crosses the West Buttermilk Road. So I think it's unlikely, well, maybe it would be possible, but if you got an easement from Eagle Pines Lot 1, then you could go from West Buttermilk Road to the adjoining property to the north. But there's already a cut for the Black Hills Energy gas line where that blue alignment is between to the west of West Buttermilk Road down to the driveway. They just cut everything down. So the Nordic Trail could go right down that Black Hills energy line easement until it gets to the road and then cross onto the property to the north. But what I'm suggesting is there's still going to need to be an easement more than likely across Pfister Tract 1 or Lot 1 if the trail is on the adjoining property to the north. And the applicant doesn't have any objection to that. They would grant that easement even if the trail shifts to the north.
Okay. Next question is the Nordic parking area. How many parking spaces you got designed for?
It's not big, you know, there might be 4 or 5 spaces there. We'll figure it out precisely. It would be a nose in. Yeah.
Just Gwen, Alice, Cody, Tyler.
Then can we go back to Tammy's revisions to the conditions again? When you cross a driveway, there's, you know, not the Nordic skier, but is there some option for, I've seen like sometimes you put down like a plastic or a rubberized mat or something like that?
The driveway has snow on it most of the time, you know, and crossing the driveway is more like getting over the snowplow bank, down on the driveway, going up the next snowplow bank. You know, there's snow there because north facing slope, it's West Buttermilk, it's high. You know, a lot of times you could just go ski across there if there wasn't gravel on the road. But it's the snowbank is the obstacle more than anything else for the Nordic skier.
And is there a plan to blacktop or concrete the driveway, or will stay?
Not now, and you know, maybe a future owner would do that. It's not in our plan, but it's possible.
And I had another question on the employee dwelling unit. It looks like you're creating another lot for the employee dwelling unit. Is it an employee dwelling unit or is it a caretaker dwelling unit?
It's a fully deed restricted employee dwelling unit to mitigate the development of the house on track 2. When Suzanne's house was built, there was a requirement that there be on-site mitigation. And Art chose to do that on Nancy's lot on tract 1. And he ended up putting his ranch manager in that unit because he lost the unit that his ranch manager was living on the lower ranch. And that's how the barn got up there too. But it's fully deed restricted.
Okay, so it's an EDU, not a CDU.
Right.
Okay. And is there any plan to expand that house? Is there any square footage? Should this be approved, go to that?
No, the house is already about 2,000 square feet.
And what's the purpose behind creating a separate lot for it?
The reason why we did that is because if that lot was on lot 1, it would come out of the 5750 entitlement for the house on lot 1. So if we create a separate lot for the employee dwelling unit, then Juliana would be able to sell lot 1 and the future owner could build a 5750 square foot house instead of one that would be limited to 3750.
Can you put up your subdivision I know we're not on subdivision yet, but can you put that back up on the screen? And just,
The one I sent you, Tammy, the one, you want to see the one with the conservation easements or the blow up?
the one that had all the lotting, that showed the lot, for example, on the employee dwelling unit.
Okay,
Portion of the property. Just so I understand, and then, you know, cause it's, you have tract one, right, and then you're creating, you know, lots. Just wanted to,
okay, we'll find it. I think it's
That was our skin.
11.
like 12 or 11.
Just for purposes of mapping where we're going for this evening, we're talking about GMQS now, and then we're gonna approve GMQS scoring, and then we're gonna talk about the subdivision, we're gonna approve that.
Right.
But we're asking questions about the whole arc now, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just clarifying, we're gonna do these in buckets for approval, but I'm happy to entertain questions on it.
If
Okay,
you guys can hear the full presentation and then do the GMQS, or we can just stop and deal with GMQS first.
Let's let Joe continue on.
yeah, this one.
Thought process.
Okay, so tract one, right? You got, the first map was tract one and tract two, and now these are lots, so obviously distinguished because. All right, so you're gonna create lot one. And then. Suzanne's house is gonna be demolished and moved to where the green dot is.
Juliana's house.
Oh, that's Julianne's
Yeah.
house. Okay.
And there may be, it's possible that a future owner might want to put a barn where Juliana's house is, because you've got this irrigated pasture down here.
Right.
So, you know, we don't know, but
Okay,
we're,
so this was formerly Nancy's house
yeah,
before she passed away. Okay, and then the lot 6 open space,
yeah. We wanted to do a PUD, Joe. And to do a PUD to vary lot sizes, you need to have common open space. So we created this parcel in the woods. And then we proposed that there be trails from each house to get to the parcel. You know, maybe there'll be a picnic site, a picnic table, maybe some, you know, chairs that you sit around. It's just a destination on the property, but it's primarily so that we can have a PUD.
I see, okay, and so tract one then really becomes 2 free market lots. And the lot 5 is created simply because you've got the EDU, right? So you're creating essentially 2 lots out of tract one, but you're also parceling out 5. So what's
Yeah.
shown as lot 5, simply like you said, for the 4 area issue. And you're creating lot 6 just to have a common open space.
Yeah, and the exact dividing line between lots 1 and 2. Lot 2 isn't exclusively coming out of tract 1. It's a portion of tract 1 and a portion of tract 2.
Okay, so at the end of the day, you've got, if you get the approvals, you've got an 8250 house on lot 1, 8250 house on lot 2, existing EDU on lot 5 as to tract.
That's close to being right. Lot 1's gonna be 5750.
Okay.
Lot 2 will be 8250 maximum. Lot 4 would be 8250 maximum.
About 3.
3 would be what it currently is. There's no floor area, additional floor area proposed on lot 3, but it could go to 8250 because that would be permitted based upon our commitments to limit house size.
Okay, got it, thanks.
Yeah.
If you go to 8250 on any of them, you need a TDR to go from 5750 to 8250.
You could go like on lot 1 from 5750 to 8250 with a TDR.
Anything that's trying to be 8250 would take a TDR to get there, or would someone come by right be 8250?
Well,
Maybe
ahead.
correct, so the new lot 2 and 4 are gonna be the new vacant lots. And with this GMQS application, they're requesting an allotment of 8250 for each of those. So those 2 lots would would have their GMQS for up to 8250. They wouldn't have to get any additional TDRs or anything.
And then you're using the existing square footage for the existing house
Lots 1 and 3 essentially.
on one for.
So 1 and 3 would need additional GMQS after this.
You go 5750 up.
I like page 3 of your packet, your memo a lot, because if you read that in order of the bullet points, it makes sense how to go and put this all together. They're all good questions to sort it out what we're doing.
That still comes to 55, what would have been allowed. Square footage.
Which was based on the 15,000 square feet because the application was submitted and deemed complete before it went from 15,000 to 92.
So much math.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Lynn said we should go up and look at it, at the easements and stuff. Do you want us to do that before we score it?
I'd like you to score it, but I think,
Question, at what point do we have to give public comment to our process of evaluating each thing if we're gonna do these in buckets? Because this is a public hearing, so technically, I'm not sure when we would like that, and
Usually,
Before we get to discussion.
yeah, and usually you'd open public comment on both action items.
Okay.
So I believe you have 2 action items in front of you right now. More,
I
perhaps.
thought it
Well, I
was
think-
more, but no.
I mean, it sounds like it probably makes sense for Tammy to, I think, continue through everything related to the application. And then you could take, have any more questions, but then go to public comment. Because again, it's gonna, technically the public hearing is just for the scoring, but obviously the comments can go beyond that, to anything related to the application. So I would think that at least put the whole presentation out there.
Okay, so let's let Tammy continue on with this.
Okay.
Kind of already started it, but
Tammy, there's 2 resolutions in front of you,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Okay.
one.
That's
per
fine the
year.
way that Suzanne's suggesting to do it, but that's what I mean by 2 action items. There's 2 resolutions in front of the board. One to approve the GMQS scoring and one to approve the conceptual subdivision plan.
We're gonna score both tracks
Mhm.
on one, on one. And then-
Yes, that's
Right,
right,
they're asking for 1 bucket of the
Right.
area for the 2 lots. basically.
exactly.
Okay. Thanks. I'll verify. You on.
You don't get to do a
Fine.
real legit subdivision very often, so it's fun.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm interested in one of them.
Yeah, no, it's fun.
Okay,
All right, so definitely the trail alignment is up for discussion. Yet next item that I think we need some clarity is the commitment on the height reduction. So currently within the application, the applicant committed to reducing the height by 15% on lots 2 and 4 to get the 1 point in the reduction in visible mass category. It was staff's position that to get that point, it should be applied to all lots, even though yes, technically lots 1 and 3 currently have houses, but when they were redeveloped, that height limitation would apply to those lots. So that's just a point of clarity, and here's the table with that language. I think the language is geared more towards a new subdivision where all the lots are vacant, so, it says proposed structures are limited to at least 15% below the maximum allowable height, so. I don't know if you guys would want to discuss that or have questions about that now. Move right along, okay.
unless the applicant wants to respond. to it.
I just have a question about it. This was a really touchy subject for us. We committed to limit the heights on lot 2 and 4, where the new houses would be built. And Tammy's suggesting that to get the point in the visible mass category, that height restriction would have to apply to lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so my question is, if you don't get the points for what we've committed, does the commitment still apply? In other words, do we have to limit the height on lots 2 and 4, even though we didn't get any points for doing it? It would be my position that we don't have to do that. And we could go ahead and build to 28 feet. I just want to mention, I've always had a real problem with the visible mass criteria, because we're in an area here where nobody's going to see these houses from the road. It's densely vegetated. You've got Eagle Pines next door, which has houses that are to the full height. Nobody really sees them. So I just think it's a odd criteria. I've always had trouble with it, because why limit the heights in the visible mass category when you can't see the houses? It just doesn't make sense to me to limit the houses to 23.5 feet when nobody sees the visible mass. So anyway, our request would be that we could go to the maximum height on all 4 lots, because we didn't get any points for limiting the height to 23.5 feet on 2 and 4.
I think we've had this come up
Roll the
once.
dice, you take your chances.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Mitch had an application where this came up, similar situation, and like I said, the commitments, once they're submitted, that's what you've committed to, points or no points. Where the board lands on if it applies to all lots or not, I think they're still committed to reduction in height on 2 and 4.
We could change our minds too as the scoring body and still give you a point. That way 2 and 4 lots would still be.
Then we'd be committed to the 2 and 4, and we wouldn't have to argue about it, right?
Kind of.
So I have a question about the 2 points. At least 30% of the requested area will be subgrade. And then everything in the county counts those square footage above, below, there, you don't get any exemption for below grade space. So I don't understand how that applies. I understand this is square footage, not height, but we're on the same slide. So,
Well, it's visible mass.
so
So the
that's what it
concept is
says.
you sink it into the ground.
No, I
It's not
understand, I
so-
understand that part, but I'm saying that, but, so you can sink it, but the square footage counts. The count, all square footage, doesn't matter whether it's below grade, above grade, it's all square footage.
Right, it's just a
It says you're getting
commitment that
30,
something that would
we're
be.
giving them 2, we're giving them 2 points to put,
Well, that's because you're taking a hit, right? Because you could have built it all above grade.
so we give them, so we're giving a bonus for not as tall,
Limiting the mass.
it's part of this 55% of the total, I guess.
Yeah, but Doug,
I don't need.
I mean, we limited the height, but we didn't say we were gonna go underground, so we didn't have any proposal about subgrade space.
Yeah, I think he's just asking the.
Oh, asking the
Asking the
question.
question, right? Standard.
I don't
Yeah,
understand.
they're asking for 1 point, not 2, but. I think the concept, at least in my mind, is, you know, you're putting a bunch of your square footage that you could have built legitimately above grade, and it still counts against your floor.
So the additional criteria to consider for this GMQS request is, does it comply with the master plan, which is the Elk Creek Master Plan in 2003?
Looks like it's out of date.
So listed on the screen are the applicable objectives of that plan, and as you can read through, staff believes that the commitments really do comply with and are consistent with those objectives of the plan. The other piece to this is the proportionality piece, and that paragraph in the code is on the screen as to whether or not the commitments are proportional to the impacts of the subdivision. So something else for the board to consider. So I'm gonna just move right along as Suzanne suggested into the rest of the code review for the application, which would be, the next piece would be the subdivision request. So section 770, listed on the screen, are those, criteria, again, compliance with the master plan, compliance with the AR 10 zone district. Which it generally does, except they are proposing the PUD. So they are proposing to limit or to vary the lot size on lot 5 and 6. Making those more like an acre, approximately an acre in size in order to accommodate that EDU and the open space parcel. And then it's also requiring compliance with all other applicable code requirements, so I'll go through the rest of those in this presentation. Development phasing, staff didn't believe they needed any phasing, it's 2 lots and they're, could be developed at the same time or not. They're not proposing any kind of phasing with that. No additional road improvements are gonna be needed. And there will be a construction management plan that's required. And staff and the applicant didn't believe a subdivision improvement agreement was necessary with this application. Section, that should say 240, and I believe, 2-step criteria for approval. So those 2 criteria are listed on the screen. As well, staff found that these criteria were complied with. Section 23040I. Again, a lot of these are very repetitive, so that's why I'm not going through them all. Found that the application complies with this section as well. There was one item to note, and that was for C, all prior development approvals. The applications compliant with all the prior approvals, and there was one condition within, I don't have it in front of me, but it was one condition that Glenn made in 1990 as to maintaining, I think it was the agricultural area on the parcel to the barn and that field. And so Glenn is proposing the residents on lot, what is that? Lot 4 instead of that barn. So there is an inconsistency there. However, they are also proposing that conservation easement area and as well as committing to preserving that agricultural land. And right now, out of that barn isn't even really being used to support the ag in that area, as I understand it so much. So moving on, the next request is the PUD review criteria. As I noted, they're requesting to vary the lot size. At this point, they're not requesting to vary the setbacks until further analysis is done with regards to the road and the trail. So they've reserved the right to come back prior to detailed submission with any request to vary those setbacks. So in general, staff found that the application did comply with all of this criteria as well. With number 5 is bolded. I just wanted to pull that out and say that staff did question whether or not the way the roads are laid out and as well as the roads in relation to the trail, if that really did minimize disturbance, and if that was the best solution. So what we've drafted in the resolution is that the applicant do a little bit more analysis to pursue some, there we go, pursue a better alignment of those roads and potentially share the existing curb cuts onto West Buttermilk Road. So as you can see, the roads here in this image are highlighted in green. The little red dots are where the existing curb cut is onto West Buttermilk Road. So the thought with the planning engineer was that these roads or driveways, I'm sorry, are so close together that there is a potential that they could be better aligned and share driveway access. But we just want to see more analysis be done on that. Prior to detailed submission.
What's the square in the middle of the green, the second green line there? Just above the red dot?
That's probably a pullout for fire department, I would guess. I don't know, if you know.
That's what that is.
And those are probably grade lines.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay, so, 37030 is the PUD designation, variations of dimensional standards. As I just mentioned, applicants reserve the right to come back with potential to vary the setbacks, but they're not at this point. But in general, staff found that the application was compliant with all these sections. They're proposing open space, as Glenn mentioned. And all their commitments. Preserve wildlife. And setbacks from streams. Okay, section 37030I is the preservation of rural character and open space. Again, it's very repetitive, but staff found that it complies with all of these criteria, with the exception of G. Again, we are asking that they further analyze those driveways and demonstrate that what they're proposing is the least disruptive. So moving on to the activity envelope review portion of this application. We've got the activity envelope shown in the orange on the screen. So to approve the activity envelope review, P&Z needs to find that it complies with chapter 7 of the code. And that criteria is site preparation and grading, steep and potentially unstable slopes, water courses and drainage, wildfire hazards, geologic hazards, wildlife habitat areas and urban stream corridors. As Glenn mentioned, the slopes on the site are pretty gradual where they're proposing the activity envelopes. There are some minor slope anomalies, but those are all associated with the existing residences and driveways and roads. They are maintaining a 100-foot setback from that existing pond and spring, so the application complies with the river and stream section. They did a wildfire hazard analysis, which found the activity envelopes are in a low hazard area, and those hazards can be mitigated. The geologic hazard section, there was some prior records that indicate that there's mangrove shale on the property. So they're aware of it. They had an engineer do some preliminary recommendations, but once the applicant has done a little bit more refinement with the roads and location of the houses, they're going to do a detailed subsurface analysis to mitigate those mangrove shale hazards. And then the last piece is the wildlife habitat area. And as Glenn also showed you this image here, part of tract 1 is within the elk production habitat area. That also means that most of these properties are within that 1/4 mile buffer defined in the code. They did have a wildlife analysis was done by Colorado Wildlife Sciences. And it was basically found within that report that this area has seen so much activity over the past 65 years, including grazing, ranching, all the residential activity that's gone on, that there's a pretty big zone of influence, as they refer to, from those existing residences. And so no additional wildlife buffer was proposed within that report. But there were some additional mitigation recommendations, such as prohibiting dogs on lots 2 through 5, I believe. as well as removing a lot of the old fencing that exists throughout the entire property. So I've included that as a condition of approval in the resolution as well. So all in all, staff found that this application complies with the policies in chapter 7 for activity envelope review. And therefore, staff is recommending approval of, as we've outlined in attachment B, the GMQS request for the 2 new development rights, as well as the subdivision conceptual submission, the PUD review, rezoning to a PUD, and the activity envelope review. That's the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Jeremy. So now can I open it to public comment? Yes, great. And as part of our public hearing, then, I would welcome the public to comment on the GMQS application that's before us, and staff's recommended points for the allocation of 2 new development rights to 8,250 square feet of gross floor area based on the conditions of the application. Who would like to come up? And then we'll go to online last, I suppose.
Yeah, if you don't mind standing up and saying your name for the record. If anybody has comment.
If you're welcome to, if not, you don't have to.
I have a question. My name is
Come on
Lizzie
up and.
Tallenfeld, and I live around the corner.
Here, why don't you formalize this? Anyone who speaks comes up and sits by Rye, please, and introduces himself with their name and address. And
So
Thank
my
you.
name is Lizzie Tallenfeld, and I live at 1514 West Buttermilk. And I'm a little confused. It's just 2 new development rights, just 2 new houses. Is that what I'm understanding?
well, let staff speak exactly.
I mean, there's a lot to this whole application, but in terms of the subdivision I mean, they're creating 6 lots. But out of those 6 lots, there's 2 new vacant lots that are being created. Is that?
So Juliana's house will be torn down. Is that right? And a new house will be built? Is that what I?
No, not at this point. I mean, potentially in the future, they could redevelop her house.
And Suzanne, your house will stay? Whatever.
Essentially, the subdivision is 4 residential lots.
Okay,
I think that's.
Okay,
And with
thank
each
you.
one with the potential of up to 8250.
okay.
And this is a public comment on the GMQS, not necessarily the subdivision.
That's what I said. I mean.
Yeah, I know I understand it's a
it's-
question, but just be clarifying. That's what we are supposed to entertain comment. Did
That was it?
you get the answer to your question?
I did, thank you.
Thank you, okay. Anyone else? Come on up and state your name and address, please.
Where you went to college?
Yeah.
My name is Chris Nolan. I think this is excellent, this proposal. Couple questions. So you're pretty committed to this as far as everybody's gonna be voting and subdividing the plot, the property today, if this all goes through, or is this just awarding a point system? Just so I can understand before I go further in my thought.
The county.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So, what is happening today from a process and procedure standpoint is the P and Z is potentially gonna award an allotment for an allowable, floor area to create the new development rights for 2 of the lots. And approve a conceptual subdivision at the contemporaneous with that approval, assuming the board does that. There are then further approvals that need to take place with regard to the subdivision in front of the Board of County Commissioners, which will be a conceptual approval, followed by detailed approval and then final plat, right? So 3 more opportunities to weigh in the future in front of the BOCC with regard to the actual subdivision that's in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission right now.
Okay, I see. I think this is excellent. I think that it's actually an effort to preserve Pickens County, preserve the natural features of it. I have a property in Brush Creek Village. I can hardly see a few houses from the property. It's all mountains. I love it. It's beautiful. And so I think that that's an excellent feature here, especially with all the things that are changing. Right now, for example, if we were to say, make this 10 conforming AR 10 acre parcels, that would result in 54,000 square feet of dwelling space. If we were to subdivide it the way Brush Creek Village is subdivided as a non-conforming, which I don't know what the process would look like in 2024 to do that. But those are 2 acre AR 10 parcels, non-conforming. That would result in 1,093,500 square feet of space, to make however many times 2 goes into 85. That's what, 42 and a half. But it'd be 42. So I think this is excellent. I think that this is, exactly what we aim to do up here as far as preserving the natural features of Pickens County and with the charm and character of Aspen, and sort of fitting this into the puzzle piece of the society here. I think that it's the right thing to do, especially with everything going on. And so I think that it's awesome that y'all are going forward with this way, and I think that everyone will be happy with the end result here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Anyone else in the room?
Thank you, Kevin Giles from Holland and Hart. I represent the owner of 2435 West Buttermilk Road. And just a few comments here, if you'll indulge me. So I guess I'm here to ask for additional time before you all approve this matter. It's important to my client that we figure out a couple things, and the first thing, and this is also for me personally too, but the Nordic Trail, I'd like confirmation on where that's going to be. I think it'll be difficult to get the neighbors buy-in on that potentially. If I were a neighbor in West Buttermilk, I would be resistant to adding an easement to my property. But the city of Aspen, OST, and Craig Ward have all had insightful comments on that, and I would like to give them another opportunity to opine on what we've talked about today, what you've all talked about today. I think the snowbank is a potential issue. Those can be considerable, as we all know. And then the second overarching issue in my mind, from my client's perspective at 2435, which, so you all know, the 2435 is tract 4. That was, I think it was Christina's tract. So it's to the south. It's adjacent to current tract 1 and current tract 2. Tract 1 is, I believe, to the north of it, and tract 2 is to the east of it, or sandwiched in there. So the concern is the impact, the sightline impact to 2435 tract 4. And we just would like to have an opportunity to speak with the applicant, whether that's with Glenn or whomever, so that we can get a better understanding of how development on lot 4 will impact 2435 West Buttermilk. And I don't know if you all resolved it today, but the issue of the reducing the height by 15% and maybe pulling that back and going back to 28 feet goes into that. So I would ask that we have additional time for my client to speak with the applicant about this to get a better idea.
Thanks for your comment, Kevin. Glenn, can you remind us when the application was submitted
September 1st.
of 2023? And today's July 2nd.
I don't know when it actually was referred out. When we, yeah.
Can we look at, can we
When you
look
get
at
public
the,
notice.
Right, exactly. I mean, public notice has been more recent on that and referral. It was in the queue for a long time, I guess, to my point.
Did you want to see the
can we
map?
look at the map that shows
Yeah.
lot or
Tract
tract 4, excuse me, versus lot?
It was one of
You want me
gold.
to show that?
But yeah, the Christina's tract versus lot 4 in the new application.
So
My other question for the applicant based on. Kevin's
this is, go ahead. This is the house on tract 4. This is the barn. And this is where the proposed on lot 4. where the existing barn is. And I'll just say, Kevin, I'd be happy to meet with your clients and show them what's going on here. I think there's gonna be very little impact, on, the house on lot 4 from the development of, on the house on tract 4 from the development of lot 4 or the development of lot 2. I don't think that they would be able to perceive the height differential between 28 feet, 23.5 feet from where they are. You know, they might see a new house on lot 1, they might see a new house on lot 2, but I'd be happy to, you know, take them on the site and show them what's going on.
Okay, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's gonna be plenty of time to do that. It's gonna go to the Board of County Commissioners for conceptual, then it's coming back for detailed and final plat, so this is really just the first of several reviews.
Oh, would welcome any other public comments since we're in that phase of the meeting. Anything else you want to comment?
Yes, can I just add one more, Chelsea, to your point about the notice? We first learned about this, I had to look it up on my computer, but I first learned about this last week,
Ah,
for the record. Thank you.
noted. Sir.
Jim Curtis. I've been representing Juliana Pfister. Relative to the request to delay action, you know, I can appreciate that. I would encourage you to act on the growth management activity because that's relatively technical and just a score. And as Glenn said, there will be some time and opportunities to deal with the conceptual subdivision, should you choose to table that. But in my mind, the growth management scoring is really just relatively black and white. Thank you very much.
And Bonnie just looked up on her computer the noticing dates, so there was a public notice on May 30th of 2024, and referral letters went out February 14th, 2024.
Thanks. Any other comments in the room this evening?
One more comment, okay.
So we do have Chris Benden on the line. Chris, if you have any comments? Oh, sorry. Oh.
We'll let this gentleman here and then we'll go to Chris next if it's brief.
Sure. So my question is about the Nordic Trail. Does it currently cross lot 5 of the map as it's proposed?
No.
No, it does not. So there's no development on lot 5 at all, which is just the one that you're
No,
considering.
lot 5, there's an employee dwelling unit
Okay, I
on
see.
lot 5, but the trail goes just to the east of lot 5.
Okay, the lot that is being restricted as a conservation easement, which number of lots that?
It's a portion of lot 4. And then it's a portion of lot 1. If you look at the screen here, I'll blow it up a little bit for you. That was a mistake. It's kind of slow.
Is there a question behind where you're asking whether the trail touches it, so we
Okay.
can move on?
Okay, so you see where my hand is? This is lot 1, so that's part of tract 2. This is lot 2. And it's part of the current tract 1. And then the conservation here is on lot 4, and it goes all the way up to the government trail. Oops. The government trail, which is right here. So that's the conservation easement.
Okay, I see, and the trail goes through the area right now, and it's being rerouted around that area because it's being conserved for.
Oh, no, the government trail is off the property.
Oh.
So this trail right now,
Let me ask the Sir from Harvard, Chris, what's your question though?
Oh, sure, yeah.
We've covered this twice, so
Yeah.
as far as presentation, where the trail is going to potentially be located.
Sure, yeah, the question is, because there was some debate about how the trail was going to be relocated and whether there would be any ongoing development that would need to be acknowledged here, that would not be if there was going to be some kind of trail maintenance, if there's some kind of prescriptive easement. That people, I don't know how it would work, my layman's understanding with an easement that's being used for leisure activities such as skiing, rather than usually generally a prescriptive easement would be, okay, I need to get from A to B, and if you reroute around that for some purpose such as this, that would then satisfy a new direction or new route, as long as it
Okay, what's
doesn't.
your question?
So the question is there, the trail that's there, does it go across any of the part of the property that's being conserved? And are we rerouting the trail to a different area, so that way that part of the conservation is going to revegetate and go back to its natural form? And that's acknowledged in here. That just wasn't entirely clear to me, because there are a few different options for what we're gonna do with the trail. And considering the prescriptive, nobody wants to be punished for doing something nice for people. It's just kind of a nuance that I'm trying to understand here.
The short answer is the existing and the proposed trail aren't in any location where the conservation easement is being proposed. There's.
They don't touch each other.
They don't touch each other, and where the existing trail is, those trails, it's my understanding that the applicant's gonna use those cuts as the trails to that common open space area, so they wouldn't necessarily be re-vegged because they're gonna be continued to be used as access trails.
Okay, I see, but they're not in the conservation development
No.
area, so it wouldn't have to be acknowledged here. Any kind of ongoing development would then have to be acknowledged in the proposal if it was within the conservation easement, for it to then be, say, okay, we're going to have to maintain this part of the conservation easement going forward. Or some kind of right of easement or whatever would have to be explicitly released, as was provided in the Redstone TDR last Wednesday, where the US Forest Service is a condition of release for that TDR to be granted. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around how this works.
I think we answered your question.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I
it's
think
not
we're
me.
gonna go on to
Thank
the
you.
next one, because we're trying to limit these to 3 minutes or so, we dwelled on it for a minute, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Bonnie, will you let Chris Brendan?
Yes, so Chris?
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking public comment on this. Chris Benden representing Scott Resnick, who owns 1313 and 1333 West Buttermilk. It's the properties to the immediate north of the Pfister tracks here. I think it's referred to as the Richard Woods subdivision. So I provided an email to Tammy earlier today, and I think she distributed that to the board. I won't go through that in detail, obviously, but you have that in front of you. That email has sort of 2 points to it. First is that we are aware of the proposal in general terms, certainly not to the level that the P&Z is going to need to go through, but we're aware of the number of homes, the number of lots. We're not opposed to the application, and we are supportive of the applicant's proposed scoring on this for growth management. As a side note, I know that we did receive notice at least 30 days ago, because I started talking with Mr. Resnick about it in the early part of June. So we did receive notice, I think, sufficient to the timing requirement. The second part of that email I mentioned is discussion of improvements, easements, trails, etc. on the Resnick property. We're hoping that the discussion, to the extent it can remain sort of within the applicant's property on the Pfister properties, mostly to minimize or eliminate any kind of expectations on the Resnick property, and to avoid creating any kind of prejudiced environment venue when and if we do come forward with a land use application on the Resnick property. Also, to make sure that the Pfister properties are enabled to move forward sort of regardless of our participation. So I'm sure that Glenn would want that too, the ability to sort of move forward independent of, discussions with Resnick. And obviously can't control how Resnick responds to any kind of discussions that we may have. So those are the comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions if the board has. Thanks for taking comment.
Thanks for participating, Chris. Are there any other participants on the?
We do have a Taylor Owen. Taylor, do you like to say anything?
No, I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we do have a Ryan Dougherty on the line, and he declined to be promoted as a panelist to speak, so I am assuming he has nothing to say.
All right, well then I'll close the public comment portion of the public hearing and entertain discussion among commissioners for the proposed resolution before us having to do with the GMQS scoring and in consideration of all that we've heard from the applicant, staff, and the public. So let's start with Doug. My left, like to ask any comments or questions about this before we
So
go
it's the first time I've gone through this scoring process, so I have a couple of questions. So I understand the staff's awarded points. I think that I agree with essentially by far the majority of them for sure. Is this something that we go through and debate the validity of their choice, and we can say, well, you gave me 2, we think it should be a 1, or vice versa, or what's the process here? And then my second question, which is probably more important, is if you meet the minimum threshold of 22, you're done, you've made it, and so you move forward, or how does that?
I'll try and fill this one and then I'll ask Ryan and maybe respond.
Sure.
But because I apologize, I should have backed up since we're supposed to be leading this and say we as a commission have the opportunity to debate the scoring, or we can accept it as is based on the reasons set forth in both the memorandum and then today's discussion. And we can ask questions about that, whether we want to accept the scoring or not, and reasons for why we should or should not accept it, and then consider the other factors having to do with the points that are still sort of open-ended. So, Ryan, do you want to pick up where I left off?
Chelsea is correct. The board can decide to accept the staff scoring, I believe, and I can pull it up unless
Unanimous vote.
it has to be, all of you have to agree unanimously to accept staff scoring. If one of you disagrees, then we need to go through each individual category and score, totally at the discretion of the board. So typically what I've seen the P and Z do in the past, Doug, is first have a conversation about whether they want to accept staff scoring. And oftentimes that takes the form of a brief discussion with perhaps a quick straw poll on who's willing to do that or not. And if that is the case, and it looks like it's going to be unanimous, somebody can make a motion to accept staff scoring and approve the GMQS allotment portion of the resolution on the GMQS allotment pursuant to any potential amendments to that resolution that may be made or have already been agreed to during the course of the conversation we've had, or a future conversation that may be had momentarily. So meeting.
Wanted to add to,
Go ahead.
add on to that a lot of times there's sort of a discussion about, I might not agree with the scoring on this criteria, but then somebody else might have another one. There's often sort of that back and forth, and then sort of to the point of, would we all agree that in the end, it might not, my change to the scoring might not affect the overall? That's sort of how I've seen the conversation go to kind of get to that point of, are we okay just adopting staff scoring?
And
Or does everybody have a concern about, a bigger concern and then step back into
and
the
if there
scoring?
is unanimous consent, there can still be adjustments to the resolution.
So you
And
can,
the issue, it seems like, is the easement, Nordic Sea easement in my mind, and so go.
Yeah,
Sure.
two separate discussions. So I would say in my experience, there've been a few times when it's close to the threshold where we've gone back and actually scored it. But with a 28 on a 22, it's pretty high. I mean, I've seen a lot of them where it's like 1 or 2 points above the minimum. but I don't know.
Or if
I
there's
mean,
conflict.
28
That
has
was the
6
only
points
thing
in
I was gonna
excess of the minimum. Frankly, my view is we could quibble about this or that, a point here or there. It's not, it's still gonna meet minimum.
Yeah, and I agree with what Joe said, and I'll add to that, that there's no competition tonight. If there was another application that we heard following this one, and then we had to divvy up the points in the allocation of square footage, then it would make a lot more sense to go point by point to rank them, because somebody could take it all and the other person could get nothing. So, Glenn?
I just,
And then the other, to Doug's other point, the scoring is separate from the resolution. So it's not like we have to accept the resolution because we had the minimum score. We score it and then we move to the resolution and see if people have comments on the resolution.
Yeah. Jasmine, let me let Jasmine go. Jasmine, do you have a point you want to make?
I would like to move to accept the staff scoring for the GMQS and then move on to the resolution.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you, Jasmine, because I was gonna take a straw poll, but we may as well just get right to it. Now that we've had that short discussion. So there's a motion on the floor to accept staff scoring and, it's been seconded by Joe. I'll let the applicant make its comment before we vote.
I got a comment and a question. Just in following up on your question, Doug. One of the things that you should be aware of is that a product of this process is a covenant that the applicant enters into that commits in writing to all of the commitments that are in the scoring. So that's how it gets tracked, is there's a covenant associated with the scoring. And then the question I have is, this goes back to the height issue. We've made a commitment that houses on 4 and 2 will be limited to the lower height. I think it's 23 feet and a half or 23.6 inches. So we're committed to that, as I understand it, even though we didn't get any points for it. But I just want to make it clear that the houses on lot 1 and 3 are not subject to the restriction to be at 23.6.
It sounds like you get the best of both worlds. Yeah.
Well, we don't get the best of both worlds. The best of both worlds would be, we didn't get any points for it, so all of them could go to 28 feet.
Sure, I understand what you're saying, but Joe said best earlier, you kind of rolled the dice there, so put it in there.
But you see, we've never made a commitment to limit the houses on 1 and 3. So I just want to clarify that those houses still have the right to go to 28 feet.
And while we're reflecting the covenant, those are height restricted, so you're saying.
Okay.
I just have one point of
I'm clear.
clarification, sorry. I think I understand. Is that staff's understanding of the relationship between the commitment made in the application and the recommendation made by staff tonight?
So it was our recommendation that to get the 1 point that it be applied to all lots, the reduction, the reduced height.
So
But it's,
if that is the case and the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously votes to accept staff's scoring of the application, are we saying that staff's scoring of the application is what the Planning and Zoning Commission is approving with regard to the height limitations on all of the lots, or would a proposed motion by the Planning and Zoning Commission to accept staff scoring need to include some kind of amendment that with regard to that commitment, it was only related to, please tell me again. lots
1, 2 and 3 would be limited to 23 and a half, but 1 and 4 would.
Is that staff's understanding?
Oh, yeah, 2 and 4, yeah.
I was paying attention the first time you went over it.
Yeah.
Okay,
it
so,
was my reading that it should apply to all lots, but I recognize that that code criteria is more geared to all the lots being vacant, but it doesn't deal with existing houses. So I think there is some room for discussion and
But I think if they adopt staff scoring, I think where you're headed is that the commitment that was made. For which no points are granted was for 2 and 4, that we're acknowledging that the commitment was only for 2 and 4.
That's what I
They're
just,
still
wanted-
not getting the points, but I think that's,
I just wanted to make sure that was
Right.
clear.
and then. I think, are you saying that we'd want to capture that in the scoring resolution,
Right,
like in a finding?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so
Okay.
clients.
So do you want to amend the
Yeah, I
motion
like
then to include that sort of footnote finding about the no point, but still commitment made on 2 and 4? Okay, does that work?
Yeah, no, that works, that's
Okay.
fine, I just wanted to make sure we were all talking about the same thing.
Sure. So then we have the motion on the floor. Is it okay, Jasmine, if we amend your motion to sort of reflect that finding?
Yes,
Remain the same motion. Second. Okay, well then, we have a motion and a second to accept staff scoring with that footnote related to lots 2 and 4 on maximum height. Remaining in places of commitment. So, let's take a vote. Doug, would you accept staff scoring?
4, yes, I.
Yes.
Covered it all.
I do as well, so therefore it's unanimous, because I would assume Joe and Jasmine. Joe, Jasmine?
yes,
Okay, then it's unanimous and we accept staff scoring. And move on to the resolution of the GMQS. Thank you.
As amended by Tammy Cohen.
Yeah, as amended, yeah. Then do we need another motion to accept the resolution as amended?
Yes,
excuse me, a question. Does that mean, the, 3A, 4C, and 14D that Tammy talked about? Are those the amendments?
Maybe put that slide back up.
Yeah, we're gonna evaluate and discuss amongst the commissioners now the resolution that's before us, and I can read it out loud.
You read the whole resolution.
Why not? No.
Starters.
Sure. And I think that we're gonna ask questions about it, so that's fine. Jasmine, your question was, does it incorporate Candy's 3 points? And she's gonna put this back on. Or how do we incorporate those?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Let's see, sorry.
Did
So
you
the-
say she does-
So the subdivision resolution or was it the GMQS?
Subdivision resolution.
Jasmine,
We
are
have
you
got
clear
subdivision.
in your question?
No, I'm sorry.
I can't hear you, but
I'm going to try to pull up the resolution on my other thing.
So we can get kind of resolution.
do people have you?
GMQS, and then we can go to the
So-
subdivision vote and go to that was
Do you want to say, go ahead?
So I
Sure.
think, I think the point of clarification is that, right, in voting to adopt staff scoring, I guess I was taking that as adopting the growth management resolution,
Ah.
granting the score, and maybe I was jumping ahead.
Oh,
I think you might have got it.
doing one at a
I
time.
think you might have got ahead of us. there.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
I'm
Thank
for the
you.
second resolution, you're still on the
No,
first one.
no, no, 'cause we
Sorry.
just voted. Sorry.
So we got 4 steps here.
Yes,
We've done number 1.
we can do it with as many,
We
we can do
got-
as many as we want, but okay, as a board, we've decided we've got the staff scoring accepted with the footnote. Now we have a resolution before us, and there may or may not be modifications to that resolution based on the points 3, 4, and 14 that Tammy highlighted, and I asked the commission whether they want to discuss those points.
So
I think that's
those,
in the subdivision. resolution.
yeah,
Okay.
those conditions
Oh.
end up in the second resolution.
Awesome.
The growth
I
management
thought the language
scoring
would have-
allocation resolution is very basic to. They've got this many points, they met the criteria, and they're gonna have to record a covenant in the end, memorializing. All of the other conditions come in basically the subdivision resolution.
Okay, I still would like formality's sake, to entertain the motion to accept the resolution of the Planning and Zoning Commission, King County, Colorado, allocated rural area residential growth management quota system allotment for new development rights to the SCP and NMP residents trust. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, I'm gonna go the roll call. Joe, do you vote? How do you vote?
Yes.
I vote in favor.
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Doug's in favor, and Jasmine?
Yes.
Then the resolution passes. And we are now moving into the next action item of the agenda, which is to consider the resolution having to do with the subdivision. Read it all. But now we can focus on the 3 points then of section 3, 4, and 14 of this resolution.
Personally, I don't think that the subdivision is particularly controversial. I know that Kevin made some comments, but this is conceptual, they'll be detailed, there'll be final plat. An opportunity to address the concerns on the potential visual impact to the house that's in the elk protection area. And, you know, let me see the ridge line or something. That's
No,
my take.
good comment. Thanks, Joe. Jasmine, do you have any comments on this subdivision topic?
I'm still kind of confused about 3A, 4C, and 14D. Is it proposed that we amend the resolution to include those conditions?
So,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
there are conditions right now in 3A, 4C, and 14. And what's on the screen is an amendment to what was provided in the packet, the resolution in the packet.
So in other words, the motion would be to approve the resolution, including 3A, 4C, and 14D as amended?
Yes.
Okay. I understand.
Doug, did you want to ask any questions or make any comments having to do with?
I would agree with you. I don't think that the subdivision is controversial. And I would accept the amendments to
Okay.
314.
Suzanne? Any thoughts or feedback? Okay. I like the subdivision plan and how it fits nicely with the PUD and PUD overlay. Yes, go on.
Well, the applicant objects to the condition 4C. And what this would require would be moving the driveway to lot 4 uphill to the south and placing the trail on the existing driveway. And that's the only way you can have a trail that doesn't cross any driveways. And I'll remind you right now, the trail already crosses a driveway. And I go back to, you know, what Art had in mind when we did the original subdivision, which was be easy on the land, do what's the least disruptive to the land. And it certainly is not building a new driveway to the south of the existing driveway so that the trail can go on the existing driveway. And if you go to the site and look, you can see that this is not the best solution for the land. It's the best solution for the Nordic skier, but I don't think that the Nordic skiing should be driving what's best for the land here. Building a new driveway and having the appropriate platform for the driveway as well as the borrow ditch, and it's just not the right answer for this land. It's the most disruptive thing that you could do. And I don't think it's a lot to ask for a Nordic skier to remove their skis to cross the driveway twice, one more time than they currently do. And I don't think that should be driving the land use decision on whether or not you build a new driveway on this property.
Well, you'll still have to go to Board of County Commissioners. This is just a recommendation from P and Z. I think maybe Tammy because maybe I read it wrong. And it looks like that second sentence is missing something. It says the location of the trail shall either be designed to avoid crossing any driveways. I think there was maybe
Yeah,
something that the
The
concept that was
original
missing.
version had the other option, which was utilizing the other property, so
I was reading
that
it.
just.
Oh, and then we got the objections from the neighbors saying, don't include us in any of these decisions.
Yeah, so that's why she changed.
I mean, I guess one suggestion is if you're okay with 3A, which is basically, can we continue the conversation about what's the best alignment? Before you go to detailed and final, and then you could take out 4C. I mean, essentially,
Yeah,
that detailed, you're gonna report back on what those conversations have been. I think that covers.
yeah,
it.
that'd be fine. I don't want to settle it
Maybe
right
we
now.
change the wording till shall seek to, shall whatever, so it's not firm, and it says you have to.
Right.
You have to not, you're prohibited from having the Nordic Trail. So I agree with Brian, I think it's gonna be a lot more impact. Nordic Trail is much simpler than a road. And I don't know, are the utilities in the road or?
There are utilities in the road now.
They could stay there.
Yeah, they could stay under the Nordic Trail. And the thing is, I just think we need to study this a bit more. Maybe the board's gonna wanna go look at the site. We can do plan profiles of a new driveway and really determine what the site disturbance would be to do a driveway versus a trail. I just don't think we ought to settle it right here without more analysis.
I agree with Glenn, and I'm not sure how to state it. So,
Maybe just take out the second sentence of 4C.
Sure, let's,
It says define the location of the trail, provide a trail, both on that,
Well,
of
and-
course, that's still up to me. Right, because we don't know what the final lineup.
I
would
mean,
be.
maybe 3A is more adding the language about the more ideal alignment minimizes trail crossings of the driveways, but also considers the amount of disturbance,
and delete the 4C.
those are the issues we're.
Right?
Can I make a suggestion about some of this language here and based on the comments from the board? If that's okay. and
Please
then
do.
you guys-
Yeah, I was actually asking
Okay.
somebody to put proper language in there.
Sure, so I generally believe I understand the conditions of approval that will be included in the proposed P and Z resolution. And these are just some points for discussion. The language I'm proposing to modify in the resolution is in section 3A, 4C, 5A, 6C, and 6E. And I'll go through them individually and we can discuss them one at a time, just so it's easy.
They all relate to that.
And they all relate to the trail, and or some other cleanup things. So, and I'm sorry to go through this, I know it's already a little bit after 7, so with the permission of the board, if we're able to go just a little bit longer to get this resolution cleaned up, and I think we may want to do that.
I'm fine with continuing, while we're on
Okay.
such a specific
I don't
topic, it
think this
doesn't
is
make
gonna-
sense to stop, so please go ahead and
Okay, I
start
don't
with
think
3A.
this is gonna take very long and we can talk about it. So with 3A, my suggestion is that it read prior to submission / final plat application, the applicant shall A, coordinate with OST to pursue the possible relocation of the Owl Creek Trail in the event that portions of the trail are not located on applicant's property. Just leave it at that.
Go slow down.
Sorry.
We're taking.
3A. And coordinate with OST, which would be Open Space and Trails, to pursue the possible relocation of the Owl Creek Trail in the event that portions of the trail are not located on applicant's property.
Sounds good,
Owl Creek Trail to the extent. Portions,
Is that,
Okay with me.
the OCT.
I'm sorry, to the extent. Was that in the event that portions of the Owl Creek Trail are not located on applicant's property? And I've got these, I can
Yeah,
send it to you if you want.
you just are okay with.
Yeah, how about that? It's just I hear it, but seeing it being redlined is not working.
Okay.
So keep going. We're
Yeah, so
okay with
for-
3A.
Four A, and these are all somewhat related. And this, I think it's important to keep in mind the timing of the approvals that are going forward when you're looking at these, so the triggers. In 3 are prior to submission / final plat application. So that's prior to coming in with the application for that portion.
The final step in the
Yeah.
3-step subdivision.
Right, at 4, it says with detailed submission / final plat application, again, same step. And now I'm talking about 4C. My recommendation is that it read, define the location of the Owl Creek Trail and provide a trail profile plan. To the extent possible, the location of the trail shall be designed to avoid crossing any driveways. Now, I'm happy to talk about that more. If it's not possible to do that, the applicant could demonstrate that, but if the applicant has some suggestions on how that language reads, other than that, I
Say the
understand.
second sentence again.
So to the extent possible, the location of the trail shall be designed to avoid crossing any driveways.
I'm okay with that. How about the applicant? I was like, what?
That's okay.
My suggestion in 5. Now we're talking about what shall be, it says delineated, but depicted on the final plat. I suggest that 5A read that on the final plat, the Owl Creek Trail and parking area easement shall be depicted as located on the applicant's property. The remainder of that, the width of the trail easement, that's all fine with me, as long as everybody else is okay with that.
Say it again.
All
Just
that,
first sentence.
sure, the Owl Creek Trail and parking area easement as located on applicant's property. It reads a little funny because it doesn't include, it should say the following shall be delineated on the final plat. The Owl Creek Trail and parking area easement as located on the applicant's property. So all that's saying is that on the plat that gets recorded, they depict the trail easement and the parking easement as those exist on their property. Of course, they can't depict a trail easement or a parking easement on somebody else's property.
I'm fine with that, commissioners and applicant, okay, we're straw polling here.
Okay.
Great. 5A, now moving to 6C.
6C, this is just a very minor thing. Currently, it says this is in relation to the GMQS covenant, which will also capture some of these commitments or all of these commitments made by the applicant. Currently, it says the covenant shall be reviewed and approved by the Community Development Department. I would add in the county attorney's office. That's just, I'm just adding in that to make me feel more important. There's that.
Okay.
Finally, 6E. My recommendation is that 6E read, this is concurrent recordation, so this is when the applicant actually records something along with the final plat. So this is kind of when, not kind of, this is when everything becomes final. I would suggest that 6E be a condition that reads the Owl Creek Trail. So what they're going to record is the Owl Creek Trail and parking area easement agreement on applicant's property. Period. And I would suggest to the extent that portions of the trail are located on property other than that owned by the applicant, the applicant shall secure consent in the form of an easement to locate the trail on the property in question. It's not a requirement that they go out and obtain another easement or anything like that. But to the extent that, for example, the trail were located to an adjoining property, the applicant would secure the right to have the trail on that property. It's all that is saying, and that document be recorded contemporaneous with the final plan.
We're asking the applicant to do that, not the. With trails or us or whatever.
Correct, as I understand the commitment is that it's an either or type of proposition, which is they're committing to locating the trail easement on the applicant's property, and I'm not gonna say the lot or the tract because I'm going to get confused and it'll confuse everyone. But generally, the intent is to make sure that folks that wanna ski from West Buttermilk Road can cross the applicant's property to continue on the Nordic Trail. In the event that the applicant and OST say, hey, it would be a better alignment to locate the property off of the applicant's property. If they do that, the condition would be that they obtain the consent in the form of an agreement to do that.
That's okay, to the extent that it's possible.
It's sure, to the extent it's possible.
Yeah,
It's not
that's
it's not a requirement that your client go out and obtain an easement from anybody or whatever it is, but if they're not able to fulfill the commitment to have the easement on their own property, there should be a corresponding obligation to make sure that connection is in place. is
Yeah,
my-
we're up for working out the best possible ski
That's
access. so
what, that's what I
that would be
understand
fine,
it to be, but as long as the board's okay with that amendment, that would be what I would suggest. Other than that, I have no other suggestions for this particular resolution. So,
I got one question about your changes, going back to 3. And this is before you get to A, B, and C, prior to submission, you mean detailed submission / final plat?
Yeah, I think it was missing.
Okay, we're missing that, right, Tammy? Oh, okay, good,
that's, yeah, sure, that's a really good clarification.
just a little bit.
I don't think you guys need to do this on the fly, right? You can do.
Yeah,
You can, we just need
you'll
formulate.
connect with
yeah.
Chelsea to sign it.
So. What about the $15,000 thing at building permits? Are we not putting that in here now?
That's already,
That was in, moved off the
That-
property, right?
Sure, and there is a condition of approval in here now, which is 6C, which is a covenant. Be recorded memorializing the GMQS commitment contemporaneous with recordation of the final plat. While my understanding of the practice that we've had with GMQS commitments in the past is that something very, well, not like, that the $15,000 obligation would be included in that GMQS covenant
Yeah,
to the extent that the applicant was not locating the easement on their own property, but we're going to go out and secure the right to locate the easement on somebody else's property, and there would be a further requirement to realign the trail to do that. That's when the $15,000 commitment would kick in for that portion of the obligation.
okay, it's just item 14E on this
Oh,
resolution too.
maybe, I'm sorry.
So I didn't know
get-
how we were
I
handling
didn't
it.
get to 14E yet, okay, oh, that's for the fire protection district.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Oh, I was reading it wrong. I just wanted to
Oh, I
make sure
see.
we encapsulated all the comments.
14D, thank you. And I would also, based on Mr. Benden's prior comments, in section 14, I'd strike any reference to the parcel to the north. And I believe that was something that was a friendly type of amendment that staff had intended to make throughout all this, is that in recognition of Mr. Benden's client's desire to not have a reference to the Resnick parcel in this, that parcel identification be removed from the resolution, is that right?
Yeah.
So I'd also amend paragraph 14, D and E, no, D, you're right, I'm sorry.
I just got a question. I think we should clarify this so this doesn't come up later on. Suppose the trail easement's a little bit on the Pfister parcel and a lot on the adjoining parcel to the north. So you'd have an easement on both parcels, which I think could possibly happen. If that happens, is there still a commitment on behalf of the Pfisters to pay $15,000 for the development of the majority of the trail on the adjoining property?
Staff would need to tell me what their understanding of the commitment made in the application was.
Yeah,
I thought it was yes.
it was speaking
There's
with,
any easement on.
it was based off of speaking with Open Space and Trails and their past relationship with that other property owner and walking a trail easement on that property. And the idea was that, I think my understanding was that the full trail would be located on that property, and that's where that 15,000 was tied to. So I didn't consider, portioning it, and, so that could be further discussed.
I still don't get the reasoning. I mean, it's great. If it works, but I don't understand the reasoning in asking this applicant to pay $15,000.
Because they get out of having to have an easement on their property.
Well, they've given it for years.
Yeah, but that's not an easement. That was just
It's also
a side agreement that they permitted, sister permitted people to cross the property.
And it's also part of the.
So I think that was the trade-off. That was what I understood the trade-off was, okay, if we don't have to have an easement on the Pfister property, we'll kick in $15,000, assuming the neighbor agrees to have an easement on their property.
Yeah, and my point is probably the majority of the easement, and I mean, if things worked out great, the majority of the easement would be on the neighboring property. But I'm convinced that there still would be a need for an easement on the Pfister property as well. So if that's the case, is the $15,000 still required?
Well, it's really up to the board, but my understanding is that it would be probably legally impossible to. It seems like it's most practical that the easement's gonna cross a portion, if it's gonna be relocated to the north. That it's gonna cross a portion of the Pfister property for a little while, deviate to the north, travel on the property to the north, and then potentially come back onto the Pfister property. So that's my understanding, and I think that if that's the only way for the relocation to work, then I think it's appropriate for the board to hold the applicant to that commitment of payment of the funds for that relocation. Does that?
Even if a small portion of the easement's on the Pfister property.
Sounds like it almost has to be.
Sounds like it to me. It's $15,000. It's peanuts.
Right.
Yeah, and Suzanne just said she doesn't want this to drag on because of this issue.
This is important.
Yeah, Suzanne says, let's not worry about the $15,000. Well, if there's some of the easements on the Pfister property, she's okay with the 15,000. She wants to move this along.
Okay.
All right, so no more. Except for deletion of the reference to the neighboring parcel, as you outlined earlier, and you're going to email comments to, or red lines to 3A, 4C, 5A, 6.
Where the discussion is.
Rye is going to provide the red lines that we heard and one by one approved as a commission to 3A, 4C, 5A, 6C, 6E, and 14D.
So I think D, you still need to tweak it a little bit. Maybe it says, probably can draft it, but if the entire Owl Creek Trail was located on the neighboring property. Or something to that. I think that's what we're talking about.
That's what he's saying, if it's right, if there is, the trail is not on the property, there is no easement granted,
Right.
then you're looking for that. The donation.
That's what I understand.
So
I
you
would-
can write language to that.
I would.
We just don't know what it is at this moment, but it's,
Yeah,
Let's make sure we understand.
it'll be wordsmithing,
And
and I will look at it.
I don't wanna get held up on it.
Well, then it sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement with the applicant and staff, that with these modifications, we kind of most likely approve the resolution. So I would entertain a motion from someone that to that end.
Should I say kind of most likely?
You don't like my big terms? Oh, go ahead.
Let me make the motion. So I move that we approve the subdivision resolution. Just to clarify, the 15,000 is payable if the trail easement is entirely on the neighbor's property, or even a portion of it is on the subject to.
Yes, we agree to that.
Yes, I believe that if a portion of it is no longer on the applicant's property, the 15,000 is applicable. Meaning that if any portion of the trailer must be located on the property to the north, $15,000 would be, that commitment would be appropriate.
Essentially, the 15 is payable.
Unless the entire trail easement remains on the Vista property. So. the
Yep,
board
yep.
can send it out.
That drives me. So Joe's made a motion. Yeah, subject to
Looking along,
clarification,
jumping.
yeah, okay. Is there a second? Great, okay, there's a motion before the commission, for to approve the resolution of the P and Z recommending approval to the VOCC for the SCP and NMP residence trust subdivision, conceptual subdivision, and unit development review, rezoning the community overlay and activity envelope, subject to the changes that we. So, we'll roll call then,
Yes.
Doug, are you in favor?
Yes.
Yeah, in favor. I am in favor.
Yes.
Joe is in favor, and Jasmine?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, the resolution passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much to staff for guiding us through this process to get to that. Our next meetings are July 16th and August 6th.
And I just got that July 16th meeting, the Owl Creek plan will be back in front of you.
Okay.
That was to send it back out to people to review that speaker language be added, so it was just, we'll just talk about that one.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Second? And all in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
As the applicant, I would just like to thank the board very much for all your time, patience, deliberation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for being
Thank you.
here. Nice to see you.
It's nice to see everybody.
Daniel,
Minutes.
Try to stay there. Thank you. I was.
I'm gonna leave it.